Hi, my name's Cheese, and welcome to another Fossil Sweeper Progress Update video. If you haven't heard of the project before, you can find an overview here, but the TLDR is, it's like Minesweeper, but you're digging up fossils, and you have to build skeletons out of the stuff that you find. Over the past month or so, I've been continuing to work on map phase improvements, and I finally shipped the first test builds of version 0.3. Supporting the depth of field effect mentioned in the last month's video, I added distance fog to the assembly phase. This fades into darkness, adding more depth to the background and contrast against the foreground. It also helps give the assembly warehouse a sense of being an unbound space as it scales up. I forgot to touch on it in the last video, but another recent change I've made to the assembly phase to help with readability has been to rework the spotlight's behaviour, moving it up really high and doing some trigonometry to adjust its radius to fit the specimen. This ensures that high position chunks stay in the spotlight when previously they could be in shadow, and helps the shadows they cast communicate position a little bit better. These changes are subtle and there's still more chunk presentation work to do, but I'm enjoying the improvements. In the lead up to shipping version 0.3 test builds, I gave more attention to my work in progress globe asset. My intention was to create shape keys for two land masses going back to the beginning of the Mesozoic era, so that I'd be able to match the version 0.2 placeholders Australia, which spanned that asset's full timeline, which at the time only went back to the end of the Cretaceous. Unfortunately, my workflow has turned out to be a little bit more cumbersome and fiddly than I had in mind. Blender stores shape keys as a list of vertex positions, but those lists can get out of whack when the underlying geometry changes. This is easy to avoid and resolve for individual shape keys, but since my shape key landmasses are all intended to be cumulative, the possibility of needing to do a bunch of cleanup and reworking if I ever change the mesh gets higher with each layer added. My normal approach with most things is to block out the basics and iteratively refine until I get to where I want to be, but at the moment I'm expecting I'll need to create separate models to rough out what I need, and then use those as a guide when creating an entirely new mesh with shape keys, after I've worked out what the maximum vertex count needs to be. The two main downsides of that approach are that it'll end up locked in a way that gives me less flexibility for the push and pull of optimization and polish, and it also means that I'll be less able to feed work in progress assets into the game along the way. With all that in mind, I've popped Antarctica and Australia with 2 layers of shape keys each on top of the basis, going back to about 105 million years ago. Even if it doesn't cover the entire timeline, it's still more than was present in version 0.2. Now that the timeline itself covers the full Mesozoic era, I've added markers onto the timeline for each dig site, showing roughly when its formation is dated to. Hovering over the normal dig site marker highlights the relevant timeline marker, and clicking on the timeline marker will jump the slider to the appropriate position and center the camera on the dig site's location. I've planned to add these for a very long time. They're present in the earliest map phase UI mockups from 2021. Paleontologist Dr. David Hocking also expressed wanting to see an indicator on the timeline when we discussed an early build back in 2022, adding to my enthusiasm for getting them into the game. Eventually, I'll animate the time slider to make the transition smoother, but it's still exciting to have them in and functional now. I also added some epoch indicators to the timeline. I've had these on my list of things to experiment with for a long time as well, but I was planning to wait until the upcoming UI overhaul before implementing them. I went ahead with doing a placeholder implementation now, since it helped with testing and confirming timeline marker placement. I think this information is important, but I'm uncertain how prominent I want it to be in the final game. Ideally, I'd like the UI to feel simple or uncluttered, so there's something to balance there. I mentioned in the past couple of videos that I've been holding off on shipping new test builds. After making some decisions regarding shape keys, and wrapping up a couple of other miscellaneous fixes here and there, I finally put out version 0.3 test builds in July. I'm still a little bit disappointed that I wasn't able to get as many first pass shape keys done as I'd hoped, but progress is progress, and it feels good to be at a point where I can get feedback from testers again. A very big thank you to the supporters going by on screen at the moment. Their support has helped me eat while making this game, and I am so very appreciative. A huge thanks also to Screen Tasmania, who supported this project with a small grant. Anyway, that's about it for today. If you'd like to keep track of development or try the playable prototype, you can find some links in the description. And if you're super keen to check out what we talked about here today, I make early test builds available to my supporters on Patreon. Thank you for watching, and goodbye!